Hey guys, Pete here. Today I'm going to be doing a Westworld Season 3, Episode 5 preview / trailer breakdown video. In Episode 4 we got some answers, and the trailer for Episode 5 is more substantial than the previous ones from the season. Quick spoiler warning, this will contain spoilers for everything that's happened in Westworld so far. I'm going to speculate about this trailer, break it down scene by scene, and talk about things that we've seen in other preseason trailers. So if you're not interested in that, then you wouldn't be interested in this video. In Episode 4, we found out that all the pearls that have been put into host bodies by Dolores, Hale, Martin Connells, and this new leader of the Yakuza are all just copies of Dolores. Dolores Prime is still in her own body, and we'll learn more about how these copies work as the season goes on. For the sake of simplicity, I'm going to refer to them as who they look like. Instead of saying the Dolores that is in the Martin host body, I'm just going to say Martin. I'm not exactly sure how I feel about this reveal. If you watch my previous videos, you know I kind of got to that point of it being Dolores, at least in the one that was Hale, because that was the only thing that could really feel like a twist. I didn't think that it would be all of them though. And it was a surprise, but I'm not sure it was a good surprise necessarily. We'll have to see how things play out. I mean, on the one hand, we have these other characters that it would be nice to see some of them come back, but there is still one Pearl that we don't know who it is. We assume that it's also a Dolores copy, but we haven't seen it put into a body yet though, so there's a possibility that one of the characters from seasons 1 and 2 could be making a return. Now that the season is halfway over, I'm expecting that these stories will start to intersect more. The other thing that Episode 4 cleared up is that most of everything we're seeing is happening concurrently rather than there being some serious timeline trickery that we've been used to. We have seen some flashbacks, but for the most part, everybody's operating in the current timeline. The trailer opens with a flashback shot of the construction of Rehoboam, I think. I mean, this could be the Solomon build that we saw from the release date announcement trailer. It's not exactly clear if those are both the same machine or if the current one is a new version of something that they already had built. We see a young Serac looking on. The voiceover is Serac in the current timeline saying, "Building a god is not easy. There were people, outliers, who you couldn't predict or control. As long as they're a part of this, there is no future for us." While he's talking, we see more images that are tied to the destruction of Paris by the thermonuclear event. We got confirmation that this is what that was in Episode 4, but not much more besides the fact that this is Serac and his brother. They grew up in Paris, which no longer exists. The setup of these shots is strange. The group of people we see off in the distance are fully decked out in hazmat suits, but it looks like the explosion is happening right at this moment. It kind of makes me wonder because there's a dead deer, which you think would be related to the explosion, but then Serac and his brother are standing there and they look unaffected. It doesn't necessarily all add up, but there's also a distinct possibility that I'm reading too much into it. I mean, you think a nuclear bomb going off would be an act of war, but I think it makes sense for us to put that in the back of our minds that we don't really know what's going on here, and hopefully we'll find out sooner rather than later. Either way, we see the young Serac looking at the destruction at the same time we hear his older self say there is no future for us. The next shot is of him flying. We see a shot of him from behind, looking like a trillionaire in 2058's equivalent of a private jet. That cuts to a shot of Caleb walking down a hallway with his Rico app collaborators Ash and Giggles. Serac's voiceover continues. Somewhere in this group is an agitator who will destroy the world. I can't let that happen. Caleb and the crew are on the screen when he says agitator, and that makes you wonder if Caleb is one of the outliers that Serac mentioned earlier. We've seen a longer shot of this from a previous trailer. Dolores is out front and Liam Jr. is behind him, so they're leading him somewhere. As he says, "Who will destroy the world?" we see a shot of Dolores with a serious look on her face. It appears she's looking at Caleb, but we can't tell for sure. Then we see Serac riding in a car when he says, "I can't let that happen." And I would guess that he's talking to Maeve after they fixed her up after the incident at the Yakuza distillery. We don't see Maeve in this trailer, but after what we've seen in the last episode, we have to imagine that Serac will continue to use her to try to get to Dolores. After that, things take an interesting turn. We hear Dolores say, "It's time everyone woke up." She says that as we see Bernard and Martin looking up at a giant monitor. Liam Jr. told Dolores that he only had read access to the outer layers of Rehoboam in episode 1 of season 3. So this is probably that. In other words, they can see a visualization of what Rehoboam's doing, but they can't actually control it. After that, we watch as Liam tries to escape. It looks like he injects Caleb in the neck with that dose of the genre drug that his friend gave him at the sex auction charity party. It looks like it knocks Caleb out, or at least incapacitates him temporarily, as it looks like he falls to the ground. In the next shot we see of him, he has a much different expression on his face. The description of genre was that it was a digital psychopharma hybrid that takes you straight to the silent era and back once it hits your implant and your bloodstream. The silent era sounds to me like it would be the time before everyone gave themselves over to this algorithmic determinism of Incite and Rehoboam, but maybe there's more to it, because I'm not sure that in and of itself would pass for a high. In some of these shots, Caleb does appear to be boosted, and that makes you think, we don't know why Dolores picked him in the first place. She picked him for a reason. There's something different about him. At one point, he mentioned having his implant turned off, and we know he surprised her in his decision not to give her up to the people who were going to kill him because they were trying to collect a bounty from Rico. This could all just be tricky editing too, because there is a black and white scene which could be an indication that that's when he's actually under the influence of genre. We see a close-up of Dolores' eye, and she's wearing that augmented contact lens we saw her put in a previous episode. After that, there's a shot of a bomb going off inside the Incite building. It's in one of the upper floors, but not much more in the way of hints as to what's happening with it. That's followed by some action sequences that we've seen peppered throughout several of the preseason trailers. There's car chases, Caleb using an RPG type device to blow up someone who's following him. It feels like all of this leads up to them meeting back up with Ash and Giggles, and the scene where we see Giggles ask who is the killer, referring to Dolores. In the voiceover, Bernard says, "Have you ever questioned what she's asking you to do?" which sounds a lot like, "Have you ever questioned the nature of your reality?" It gives us the impression, as we see them together, that he might not be completely on board with what she's asking him to do. Ultimately, I think that Caleb will be a positive influence on Dolores, perhaps bringing her back from wiping everybody out or something to that extent. But we still have a lot to learn about what Dolores is actually trying to accomplish. Everything that she's said about it so far has been fairly vague. She says she wants to give people a chance. With Caleb, at least, there seems to be this idea that the system decides that he's not going to turn into anything, so it reinforces that path for him. And thankfully, this trailer does seem to look like it's going to give us more of an idea of where Caleb is operating from, like what he's trying to accomplish, how working with Dolores is affecting him, and the larger role he'll probably play in the endgame. There are a few quick flashes in this final sequence. There's what looks like a detonation device on a motorbike. This is probably connected to an earlier shot where we see a burning bike roll by. There's a shot of Serac walking away from a meeting with someone important. There's military officers lining a red carpet, giving it a head of state kind of vibe, but you can't say for sure who he's meeting with. There's a shot of Giggles and Ash with guns drawn, and all the emotions on his shirt seem to be lit up at the same time, which is funny. There's an overhead shot of the beach. We see Caleb over Liam, and the waves are sort of crashing down. We've seen this image before, and a lot of people jumped to the conclusion that it was Lee Sizemore that was the person that Caleb was leaning over. This is a lot clearer though, and it's easy to see that it's actually Liam Jr. There's a shot of Stubbs taking a swing at Martin, so we can expect those two to get into an altercation. There's a shot of an unknown character firing a gun at a moving target, which is probably connected to all these car chases that we see. And then the trailer ends with Dolores holding a flashlight or something similar, and she's looking at something, but of course we can't see what that is. So overall, the trailer seems to be focused on Serac, giving us more of an idea of what he's trying to do, and Caleb and how he fits into the bigger story. We don't see anything from the Man in Black here, or any shots of Hale, although I'm guessing that that whole Delos storyline will still be in play. All of the action sequences are probably tied to the fact that Team Dolores has Liam, and they're also trying to take control of Rehoboam. That all feels pretty straightforward forward at this point. It's interesting because a lot of the popular theories that have been kicking around, this idea of a mirror world and part of the season being depicted in what is essentially a simulation, I mean, we don't see a lot of anything here that kind of gives us that feel. The only thing in episode 4 that kind of even was in that area was the Maeve part of the story and the way that she sort of had control over all the computer systems as she was moving around. By the end of that, revealing that it was a Dolores Pearl and the character that we knew as Musashi, that kind of changes the perspective of that, but at the same time, I wouldn't rule it out either. We know Rehoboam creates its simulations and that's how it predicts the future, so that certainly exists. The mirror world certainly exists, and because it does, there's a good chance that it'll play a part in what we see unfold. And with that, I will leave it there. I'm enjoying this season for the most part, and I'm excited to see where they take us. Let me know in the comments what you're excited about, what you want to see happen. Please like this video if you enjoyed it. Please subscribe to my channel if you're not already subscribed. Thanks for watching. I will talk to you soon.